Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is the 10th of December for many of you, and the 11th for me because I'm still in Thailand. And this is Index Office Hours 187. For those of you who are new to Index Office Hours, this is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexes. And as always, we love participation. This is a conversation. We do love participation, so you can get involved in today's conversation via voice or text. If you're having any challenges with the voice aspect of communication, let me know and I'll get that sorted for you. As a reminder, this is a session that's going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's agenda. So we've got episode 198 with 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗂, and 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗂 is the technical product lead at 𝗨𝘀. 𝗨𝘀, if you don't know, is a new blockchain run by the 𝗨𝘀𝗂𝗧 team, and it's now one blockchain. And Sean talks a bit about his background. He's based out of St. Louis. He talks a bit about how he started in Web3. He had a computer engineering background and he worked on flight control systems before moving into MasterCard and then eventually Web3 with Dapper Labs. And so he talks a lot about their wallet, their Dapper wallet, and the NBA Top Shot, which is one of their biggest games. And so if you're interested in learning a bit more about 𝗨𝘀 and Sean's journey, as well as his views on AI in the Web3 space, then do go ahead and check out that particular episode, which should hopefully be linked by Juan, as always, in the chat. Wonderful. That is it for opening remarks, and I will hand over to Anna for our regularly scheduled repo watch section.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, everyone. Okay, so today's repo watch is super short, so starting and probably ending with execution layer client, we have had a new release for 𝗨𝘀𝗂. This is version 187. This release sets the L2 migration block for 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗀𝗀 testnet, and this is just to keep a clean client, so it can be skipped for mainnet and it's not an immediate release. And then that's basically the only release we have on repo watch this week that is a stable release. But I just want to mention something that came up last week, which is an issue with Heimdall. With the newest fork, Polygon Amoy has been broken for a bunch of us, so we have had to resync from a snapshot and use an external Bor RPC while everything was syncing. I've linked the bug in the chat, so do check it out if you've had this issue. But just so you know, use the latest version, resync from a snapshot, and then you should be good to fix your issue if you come across this. And this is all I have this week for repo watch, so handing over to you, Juan.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, getting into Protocol Watch, as always, we start with forum governance, and we have a few topics to cover here today. One is the Evolving the Graph Protocol Economics 2024 thread, which we'll cover more in depth later with Rem. Then we also have numbers mainnet chain integration. This is a new, well, not a new, it's been running since 2022 apparently, but it's another EVM chain that requested integration to the protocol. So if any of you want to try it out, the thread is linked in the agenda. Then for forum research, we have all of the core dev updates as always. That includes Edge in Node, Semiotic, GraphOps, Pinax, Streaming Fast, and Geo. All of those are pretty lengthy by themselves, so they are all linked in the agenda in case you're interested in any of those teams. For the contracts repository, we have updates to the trust audit with all of the fixes being open PRs. That includes stuff for the data service contract, dispute manager, subgraph service, Horizon staking, and graph payments contracts. Again, if you're interested in the whole Horizon story and how it's been going with the code changes, All of those open PRs are linked in the agenda. And for the network subgraphs, we don't have any new updates since last IOH. That's pretty much it. I don't know if Pac is around. I don't see him around. So I'm going to be handing over to Abel now.
Testing 1, 2. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Is this better in terms of audio?
Sounds better to me.
It sounds good to you? Okay, cool. All right, fantastic. Well, Pac is not here, so we're going to get straight on into the open discussion. And we have the good fortune of having Rem joining us today. And as Juan has mentioned, there was a big proposal that recently came out, which many of you should definitely check out. And I won't say too much about it, but I'll let Rem do the honors. We're going to do multiple of these. So today's just going to be an introduction into this forum post, and proposal. But yeah, Rem, take it away.
Thank you. So I started at the graph probably, well, it was a little bit over a year ago, and I just want to sort of start with, I'll try and share my screen, and there's slightly a technology test, I guess. And
Yeah, it should work. You do have the presenter role. There you go. It's loading up right now. Boom. Yeah, we can see your screen.
boom, okay. So really the thing I'd like to start a little bit with is why actually are we talking about evolving the protocol? So when I started at Edge and Node, the graph, we were just talking about a horizon at that time. We also had the original protocol, but I'm quite curious just from this group. And by the way, I didn't do the drawings. You can see it is still attributed to the original author. But share a little bit in the chat why you think we're looking at protocol evolution, if you know, and if you don't, you can just say I've got no idea. More services, more money. And I see lots of people are now typing at the same time. I'm just going to let a few more come in. Many aspects of the protocol could work better. Curation as an example. Yes, curation is definitely one of the things that has been a hot discussion topic. Good things evolve. I think that's a really valid point, actually, and it's a topic that'll come up again, because actually I think the protocol that we've got has served us pretty well, but there are things that now need to change, otherwise it won't keep seeing us as well as it has done in the past. And the very crowded market, when you compete, efficiencies, feature improvements, fixing issues, aligning incentives with valuable work being done. So incentive alignment is actually one of the key themes, as you'll see. Okay, so I'm sort of getting a sense of a few of the themes there, and they are basically the right themes, but I'll frame it slightly differently. As I saw it when we were discussing about a year ago Horizon and the graph protocol, Horizon had identified some key issues with the original protocol, some things that needed to be improved. But as we started discussing how that would be implemented, it also brought up some things to the surface, like, okay, what's going to happen to curation? What's going to happen to delegation? Because there's an implication that these things were going to change, but it wasn't yet clear how they were going to change. Does that seem like a fair statement, by the way, to the group? I'll just move on as the replies come in.
Yep, that's well articulated.
Brilliant. Okay, so what I'm going to actually do first is, I don't know how many people have had a chance to read the post yet. It's a reasonably long post in the general scheme of things, and it's a post that is actually at a reasonably high level, so it covers lots of points and doesn't actually, in my opinion, go into all the detail of them, and we're expecting more of the detail to come with subsequent. Agree on the high level. Oops. But hopefully it's working again. Hopefully all the high level things make sense, even though the details haven't been worked out. But what I want to first do is start talking through, as the original post does, who some of the participants and their roles are in the network, and actually what the whole protocol looks like to them, what sort of their needs are, if you like. And I'll just list them first. So we've got the consumers, right, the NPS, people actually using the protocol. We've got the provider, which is a more generic term for indexer. Most of the time we say indexer. Actually, there are some data services we run that don't really fit neatly into the indexer framing. So the slightly more generic term I'm using as provider. Gateway, obviously, key participant. Contributors. This is probably with won't go.
Hey Ram, we lost your audio.
My dongle's complaining about being disconnected and reconnected. I've put it in a different USB port. Hopefully it works now. But no, then never fear. I'm not using an iPhone. It should be okay for the rest of the session. Now, so we have contributors. You can think of subgraph developers as being the primary example of that, but I think it's an area we need to look at a little bit more for the overall health of the network. We've got delegators. I think you're probably all familiar with what they are. Curators, I think you're all familiar with that. Probably want to change a few things, but you're familiar with what it is. And now the last one of this list is what I call a sponsor. Now, I'm not going to try and completely define what a sponsor is right now. For now, just think of it that when we introduced indexing payments, which at some stages we were calling DIPs for direct indexing payments, there is someone who's actually paying for a subgraph to be indexed. And for the time being, just be aware that I'm calling the person or the party that's paying for the indexer a sponsor. It doesn't matter who it is. They might be a gateway, they might be a consumer themselves, might be another indexer, whoever's paying for the subgraph through an indexing payment is referred to as a sponsor. Any questions at this stage? Because before, what of interests we need to be looking at?
I see a few people typing. No questions from me, but let's see if other people do have questions.
So despite not using an iPhone, I still seem to be having problems. Anyway. Moving on. So I'm going to look at these a little bit one by one. I'm actually going to spend most time on probably the category that's the most interest of you in the providers. But I'll start briefly looking at a consumer. And this is where, please, at any stage, give me your thoughts on the chats or or interact if you think I'm missing anything, if you think I'm saying something that you don't agree with, etc. Because this is very much intended to be an exploration to make sure that we as a community find the best answer here, and I'm sure there'll be some aspects that change. Anyway, so consumer. So key considerations for satisfying consumer needs and optimizing their value. And by the way, how many people have already read the post and roughly know where this is going? Oh, I got asked what's the difference between a consumer and a sponsor. So a consumer is someone who is using the graph network to satisfy the data needs. So they're, broadly speaking, they're typically querying data, typically doing so through a gateway. A sponsor is someone who's paying for indexing. And a sponsor I consider more of a role than a persona, if you like. So multiple participants might be a sponsor at different times. Questions?
You cocksucker, honest.
Now, okay. So, consumers. Now, I'll go through a few things, right? So the key considerations: one, we need to conveniently match individual consumer needs, right? So the whole network, it doesn't matter how wonderful and clever everything we do is, if it's not supplying the consumers what they need, we're probably just going to become slowly irrelevant over time. Two, it actually makes the I have this annoying thing. My dongle keeps saying it's disconnected and then reconnects. So if you keep hearing a pause, that's why. And I don't know what I can do to change it. Devices. It will take me fast. I don't know where it is currently. Still hear me at the moment?
Yep. It just comes in and out, but we can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. I'll switch to this as my audio, and hopefully this works. So, consumer payments are a tangible metric of the value delivered, and this is actually really important from a protocol economics point of view, because it's actually very hard to find another way of measuring whether it was really delivering value for consumer or not, other than actually, are they paying for it? If they're paying for it, it's probably of some value to them. The third thing, this is something we're not doing at the moment, but enabling consumer contribution and role progression. We sort of have consumers a little bit, and over here I'm going to sort of be a little bit vague as to whether it's a subgraph developer or an end user. In this case, it's probably more a subgraph developer. But basically, the people who become involved in the network currently have a bit of a siloed workflow, and we want to change that a bit. This proposal doesn't really go into all of the details, but it is laying some of the foundations we need to make the whole user community that's using the graph a little bit more collaborative, or I should say a lot more collaborative, so that we get more reuse and more network effects, essentially. And I'm just seeing any, yeah, okay, good. So for facilitating reuse to boost efficiency and value, and I sort of started talking about this and with the last point. Basically, for our consumers, we want them to come to the graph and to be able to find what they need, not to have to build it from scratch each time. Of course, you can pick up a subgraph at the moment and reuse it. That does happen sometimes, but it's not happening nearly as much or to the extent we want it to or think we can. And finally, I'll say we want to expand the value proposition and serve additional consumers. And the knowledge graph is one example of this. Also, all the value created by subgraph developers, if we can make that a little bit more accessible to a wider group of users, rather than requiring that level of expertise, we can also increase the number of consumers we can solve problems for, essentially. Now, any questions on that before I move on to the next section, which is probably the most interesting section for this group. So the provider or the indexer, and I'm normally actually going to use the word indexer, by the way, but I have quite a few sections in this, as anyone who's read the post will know. But I'll just start by saying that for both indexers and the graph network to thrive, there are two critical indexer profiles that has to be facilitated and incentivized and balanced. Anyone want to guess what they are, by the way? On the chat. And some of you probably know, some of you have read the post. I'm just curious if you know, or if you're thinking, what on earth is he going to bring up? I can see a few people are typing away merrily. And again, I do want to encourage you to start asking questions, see if there's anything you don't agree with something missing, etc. So we're talking about people who index data and people who search queries. So what I'm actually getting at is an indexer really goes through two phases in their life cycle. First, they are a new indexer joining the network, and basically our network depends on them being able to join, right? We're constantly trying to make sure that the barrier to entry, particularly the technical barrier to entry, is as low as possible. But this is just a starting point. So although we have to make sure that this category of indexes has to be facilitated, it's actually for anyone who comes here an interim state, because actually you've got the second state, which is established indexes operating on the network. And for this group, from the network point of view, we're absolutely dependent on high quality experience indexing, indexers providing good service to maintain the network's efficiency and performance. And of course, from the perspective of the established indexes, they're coming here so that through their expertise, they can earn some reward. So that's a little bit why I'm concentrating on those two categories. I'm actually going to focus most of how I talk about what I think matters from the point of view of indexing from the established indexes point of view, and it sort of goes back to at the end, and how do you join the network and become an established indexer? Hopefully that makes sense to you. So established indexes and consumer demand. the more value that we create and deliver to consumers, right, the more income there is essentially on the network. So this part is absolutely essential, right? The more value, the more they're willing to pay, the more indexing income. But also, we need to look quite carefully at how well individual consumers are matched to indexes. And this is not that one indexer is necessarily the best for a consumer. That's almost certainly not the case. This is what the networks need to help facilitate, is that actually the gateways and the rest of the network in combination basically match consumers to the best indexes, because that means it's the most the most suitable match, I should say, between indexes and users. And a really obvious example of this is geography, right? If you are in Southeast Asia, then an indexer on the other side of the world, in Canada, for example, is probably not going to give you the best latency. And if it's latency, you're worried up, you'll end up choosing one locally. So the network actually needs to facilitate this happening. Oh, and you're getting choppy audio. Shall I do your I'm trying plugging my headset back in.
Oh, that's much better. When you said plug my headset back in, you sounded much better there. Hopefully it stays like that.
Hear me? Yeah.
Yep, we can hear you.
Brilliant. Okay. So, third point I'll mention here is the uniqueness of the consumer value creation graph. Right? Essentially, the more we're in some way different from the competitors, the better it is for the network, better it is for individual indexes in comparison to other sources of data for consumers. All makes sense so far? And I'm not sounding too robotic now? Good. Okay.
Yeah,
so efficiency and profitability of indexes. So in the previous part, I was sort of talking about the value to consumers, right? But there's a flip side if you look at it from an indexer's point of view, right? At the moment, indexing can look a little bit like warming, if you like. So if a subgraph comes available on the network, you might have 100 indexes indexing it. And when you don't really need 100 indexes, maybe you only need 10. Who knows how many you need? But it becomes inefficient. And because it's inefficient, you're going to have two things happening, right? The price for your consumers goes up, and the margins for indexes go down. So we don't actually want that long term, right? We actually want long term that indexing is efficiently distributed to satisfy the demand, but minimizing the unnecessary costs, right? Minimizing in the long term, indexing things, doing work that has no value. And I know at the moment that's a little bit masked, because actually you're being rewarded through indexing rewards. So it's not coupled to the consumer value, but over the long term, that will need to change. Right? And then the next point, so accurate matching of indexes to consumer needs. So the better the indexes are matched to the needs of consumers, the more value you can deliver. Right, if you are asked to index something through an indexing agreement or through some mechanism, you will have a very good chance of actually subsequently being asked to set queries as well. And that's a good relationship to have, right? That you end up doing the indexing that's worthwhile, you end up doing queries associated with that, you end up doing a lot of processing of data that's delivering no value. I've noticed someone saying indexing is resource demanding. Some people, I think, say I'm still a little bit robotic, and maybe that's just REM AI taking over. So efficient use of GRT to provide services. It's also worth mentioning efficient management of including GRT play a key role in maintaining profitability. Okay, I'm going to try and speed up a little, actually, unless people have questions. So additional dependencies for maximizing income and efficiency. So these are that having to managed. So the overall quality of service provided by the network. Obviously, the better the quality of service, the more consumers come to the network. So reliability and trustworthiness of services and data. We have to make sure that the consumers who do come to the network, that they do get a good quality of service and they can rely on it. The ease of permissionless entry of new indexes. I've kind of talked about this a little bit. We need to make sure this remains the case, and we need to keep working on making it so that new indexes always have the opportunity to join the network, and opportunities for specialization. Won't go into this in too much detail, but over the long term, as different consumers have different types of needs, different query patterns, we also expect that different indexes will say, actually, I'm going to specialize in satisfying that sort of query load, and I would be able to serve those consumers well. Of course, data services also comes into this, providing different data services. Okay. And finally, the effectiveness of the graph in attracting and retaining users. Right. So we all basically rely on how effectively we can retain more users. That's where we're going to get our growth and our real success from growing query fees. Does this all make sense, by the way? I'm sort of running through this a little bit. Let's see if there are any reactions on that or otherwise. Yeah, so it's making sense to at least one person know the people. That's a good start. Good. Key performance indicators. Good. Okay. Now, aligning indexes with value delivery. So just a few weeks. What I wanted to make here, and so some of these are a little bit different from how you might have thought of things with the protocol so far. That might be a little bit driving, but the first point I want to make is indexes are not well positioned to predict consumer demand. And I think that this is not helping either you, consumers, or the network. The network needs to do more to actually, if you like, and I'm going to sort of overlaps a little bit with what I've said before, but the network needs to make sure that you're matched to the consumers who actually see value in your service. It's not, I think, the role of an indexer to try and figure out what queries are going to happen on which subgraphs. Now, curation signals are not reliable predictors of query demand. I think this is probably a point everyone's very aware of and agrees with. Actually, curation varies for all sorts of other reasons. We've not, through curation, really got the right way of predicting that demand either. And finally, curation signals do not facilitate the efficient allocation of indexing resources to match consumer demand. Right? I think we're all aware at the moment indexing rewards is a funky formula of combining your allocation with the amount of signal from curation, etc. And what they're not really lining the network up is to make sure that the right indexing is happening, the right data set, in the right place. Now, and this is that's the last section I've got on providers here. But if we're now thinking about transitioning, actually it's not. It's a slide not quite true. There's a little bit of summary at the end, but this is the last main section. So, transitioning to a demand-driven network. So at the moment, we don't have really a demand-driven network. We've actually done a really good job collectively of getting such a good network into place. And I think, the indexes on this take a huge amount of credit for that. I think you have been really good partners and supporters of the whole ecosystem, and it's fantastic that we've got this far. Would not have been a foregone conclusion, but we need to transition to the network being reliant on the subsidy of issuance to actually the network being demanded by external income, because that's what ultimately will bring us the most success. And we need to make sure we do maintain the permissionless entry. We need to make sure that an indexer coming onto the network can build a reputation and the relationships to become an established indexer who's making a profit from operating on the network. We need to make sure for that, really, that we're matching indexes to useful work. We don't have indexes just doing work that's not the work that's delivering the value. And we need to make sure that when indexes are providing excellent service, that the network is rewarding them for that. Right? So there's a little bit of an imbalance we have to shift at the moment, where it's possible to earn indexing rewards without really being available, so without necessarily delivering as much consumer value as you should. We need to make sure that when indexes are delivering queries and providing a good quality of service, the protocol recognizes that and it's that. Okay. Are you still having an issue with it? I'm not using AirPods, by the way. Anyone?
Audio sounds good to me now.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. This is really a little bit of a brief summary of that about indexes. It's almost the same text as you'll find at the end of the section on the forum post, by the way. Basically, it's the original indexing system served the network well during its early stages. I think it's incredible that we're at this stage, right? And we should all be we're very appreciative of everyone who was involved in getting us to this stage. But as the network matures and becomes more demand-driven, so more demand-driven is really that it's driven by consumer needs and consumer payments. So the current mechanisms will not serve indexes as well, right? It's not just a matter of consumers are not going to be well net served. It's not actually going to serve indexes all that well either. So we do need to change it. And we have to align the incentives to focus on delivering real value to consumers. Right? We need to ensure that indexes are rewarded based on their contribution to that value. So you will see a lot of the proposals, or lots of parts of the proposals, are really linked very strongly to aligning incentives with consumer value.
Hello?
Now,
Yeah, speaking.
I don't know, got 10 minutes left. I don't know if anyone wants me to briefly pause and ask some questions there, or if you want me to keep going a little bit. I'm a little bit tempted actually to skim over the rest of these and give you a little bit of a flavor, shape of it, that we can have a conversation on that in a future session. But you tell me, there's definitely too much to talk about what proposal is to cover in the remaining time.
The choice is yours.
Yes.
Let's see maybe if people have any questions. I see some people typing. We can field some, and then if there are questions, yeah, we can field them. If there aren't, then we can crack on. Let's see. Curation is not working according to new. Okay. But the proposal, it seems the opposite. Yeah, I'll let you respond to that.
So the way curation is working has been changed as part of this proposal. As a short answer. So curation as it was flawed, and you know, I've seen some suggestions to get rid of curation. And actually, at one stage, from a terminology point of view, I did. My earlier version of my proposal didn't have a curator role. But after we went through a cycle of working through it, we realized actually this new role actually shares a lot of the characteristics of curation, and it's working as it should. And it's probably better to still call it a curator, but just upgrade the mechanism. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay. I'm going to try and cover these really quickly, because I don't think these are earth-shattering insight for you. The index of parts probably the most worth it is. So the success of gateways depends on the health of the graph network and efficiently incentivizing indexes, right? So gateways need to be able to get the right indexes involved to serve the right queries, and incentives need to line up for that to happen. Contributors, I'm actually a little bit tempted to skip over some of these and give you a slightly different view of it. Now, I see there's a question in the chat. Curation should be in the protocol to determine the subgraphs to index and how many indexes are required to fill the demands. Yes, exactly. And curation at the moment doesn't really specify how very effectively how much. And then another flaw is that it doesn't necessarily find the right indexes to match the consumer's demand. So if you're in North America and you curate on something, you've got no control over where it goes in the old mechanism. In the new mechanism, that will change, that the curation becomes a more effective mechanism, and it also becomes broader in scope. But I'm not going to try and cover that in 10 minutes. Or it's like more than 5 minutes. What I will just, I'll briefly cover these points out. So issuance distribution maintains indexing and network health. So this is one of the existing mechanisms. So I explained when I started that we had the original protocol, Horizon came along. There are some things in the original protocol that we want to maintain, and this is one of them, that there is a good, sound way of distributing issuance. And there was some sort of confusion when Horizon came along and indexing payments were proposed because it wasn't clear how we were going to achieve this. So we do need to maintain this. The other related thing is the original protocol has integrated role incentives that holistically balance the network. And this is really important. The network is actually designed as a set of integrated mechanisms, not just one or two mechanisms working or a set of mechanisms working in isolation. Curation works in combination with indexing rewards, etc. All the pieces fit together. And the replacement, as we upgrade the whole protocol, has to maintain that balance. But currently, network rewards are not linked to consumer value delivered, right? So you can get indexer. It's been very good for establishing a network, but it's clear that how many indexing rewards you get is not related to how well we're serving our consumers, and there can be a huge difference there. I'll just another point I want to fix, limited incentives for network contribution to consumer value. But hang on, I see a couple of questions come up, or at least one question. Is there a goal to abstract the decision away from the index in terms of which subgraphs they index and serve queries on? Essentially, yes. So essentially, because gateways are the aggregators of demand, and other sponsors can play and curators can play in the game as well, but let's describe it mainly from the point of view of a gateway. Gateways aggregate demand from many users, and gateways are therefore in a good position to match the right indexes for their particular consumer to satisfy that consumer demand. And that will be a combination of factors, including geography, but also under different situations, there's different price sensitivity, different data services are required, etc.
Right. One quick question on that is the intent of decisions that ways making is something that continually reanalyze, every five minutes, something. Okay, now who is this index or based on those factors, or is it?
I put into it's like I'm hearing 2 or 3 copies of that. You can parse it.
Testing, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's much better now. No echo.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I think it's Discord. I don't think it's everyone in this call.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So my question was more so that decision process that the gateway is making to determine which indexers can actually serve the queries. Is that something that will be periodically reevaluated, or is that something that is set up once and then that person just kind of sits there, or what does that look like right now?
So a few points to that. One, I'll just start with saying we don't know all of the details yet. And that's both for how we start and how it evolves over time. I do think we'll need to both design the mechanism quite carefully, get input in that, but we're also going to need to see it running and see where it needs adjusting. But I think there are two clear components here. One, it will be dynamic in nature, if you like, as I see it, right? So if a gateway chooses one indexer for a particular purpose and that indexer for some reason is no longer, let's take an extreme scenario, goes offline, that gateway is then going to choose another indexer. So from that perspective, it'll be dynamic. But I also want to point out that there are two quite, if you like, different, and I'm just aware I've basically got less than 1 minute. So there are two different selection sources, because one of them is the protocol itself from issuance, and the protocol itself from issuance has different criteria to a gateway acting on behalf of users. So the protocol will be looking very much at the health of the network and enabling any indexer to come onto the network. It won't be so latency sensitive, for example, because it's not so interested in latency. It's interested in making sure that a combination of things, including that new index, can join the network. Whereas the gateway will be looking very much at the track record of what's been served and how that best satisfies the known demands from that machine. And I'm aware I'm at time, so I won't introduce the. I've got interrupted halfway through. I'm not going to talk through it all. I'm just going to finish this part of the diagram and say, actually, the conclusions led me to is there are really three areas of focus: maintaining the network balance. There are some things about the original protocols, the way it works, that we have to carry on and make sure are still the case in the upgraded protocol. We need to enhance incentive alignment. We know the incentives aren't always as well aligned as they should be, and that's the key theme that's informing a lot of the decisions. And the third point is we have to design the network to keep growing and innovating over time. And the way we think about this protocol evolution is not just what we need over the next year or two, but making sure that the protocol is set up for the long term.
Amazing. You have a question from Mickey in the chat. Maybe if we can address that before we wrap.
The honest answer to that is I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I'd love to know the answer. It's possible other people do, but I don't.
Got it. And then, okay, we should look into that. Okay. Okay. Rem, if you're happy to go over slightly, if there are any additional questions, is that okay, or do you want to?
Yes. I think I should not introduce any more topics now, but just allow people's questions to sort of die down and be be satisfied. So all good KPIs, there should be a dashboard of these and some way of measuring them. It's I'm not sure which ones in particular, but yes, it's completely true that the whole network should be transparent, right? And this is particularly and obviously true about where the protocol is basing decisions on it. But even outside of that, I think the whole network benefits from a good degree of transparency and understanding how networks working. So how will we address the issue of indexes indexing, serving any query? It's a new proposal. Basically, the quality of service of an indexer is taken into account. I'll try not to go into too much detail now because of time, but essentially, quality of service becomes a factor. And if you're not serving any queries, then you will not get a lot of, the network will not be requesting you to do a lot of work, basically. You'll always get a little bit. That's the way the network works. You always have an opportunity, but you won't get a lot of work. Is there going to be more? I'll be doing as many indexer office hours as you want me to, or you put up with me for however you class it, because actually there are a series of other improvement proposals. This broad one is actually not really proposing all that much, but it's an agreement on intent, saying this is the shape of it, but actually planning a series of subsequent GRPs to deal with the individual parts that hopefully we can, if we all agree on the shape of the target, we're in a good position to evaluate them, and they should, of course, come up for discussion at our end. I mean, this proposal is quite a big deal. It's the TAG has already had a look at it, but for a preview, but then we'll look again, and we'll go to the council. I don't know the exact details of that process. I would be very, very surprised if the council did anything on this without getting understanding community sentiment. I expect that they would look at the community sentiment before taking a vote on this. What is it? The threshold for calculating an index is quality of service score. If they collected let me read the list of the questions for this one. Well, how best to describe this? So there's definitely an aspect here. Openly already played around with a few different algorithms and a few different ways of doing this, but do not have a final answer yet, right? And it's actually something we want to do openly with the community is figure out the scoring. It will not be as trivial as you get a high quality of service on one subgraph, right? Your reputation will accumulate based on how much you've proven yourself over time. And I know someone else once asked me, by the way, the importance of stake, whether that's self-stake or delegation, won't go away. But effectively, quality of service will help determine, almost like a multiplier. I think it's probably the best way of describing it, right? When you first come onto the network, and you haven't proven yourself, you don't get a very high multiplier. But as you start doing work and proving yourself, the multiplier on that increases, so you get more work. Anyone other than Vicky? I'm aware, I think we've already lost a few people. I'm wondering if it's the time to wrap it up, or some real burning unanswered question.
Yeah, I'm happy to wrap. Okay, thanks, Rem. Awesome. Yeah, well, I want to say a massive thank you to you, Rem, and everyone else who's joined us today. The audio was a bit so-and-so, but I think that's a Discord issue, as Derek highlighted, because it affected many of us today. Hopefully the recording sounds good, but in any case, really do appreciate each and every one of you for joining today. We will, as Rem said, do another one of these, perhaps multiple, because this is a very meaty topic. There's a lot to discuss, and I'm sure many of you have a lot of questions. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that it's properly covered. So rest assured we'll have more sessions, likely. Is there someone running an indexer on... Potentially. That's probably why the audio is really bad today. But it is what it is. Yeah, we'll definitely have a session on this in the future. Any final words, Rem, before we wrap today's conversation?
No, thank you all for your time. Please go and have a look at the forum post and also engage there. There will be future IOHs, so I look forward to your input.
There you have it. Thanks, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again same time next week on Tuesday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.